Hey everyone, I'm Christopher Hargett. Today we're going to be going over ACL meniscus repair. I most recently had mine done about 5 months ago, so I'm a couple weeks out from getting medically cleared to start returning to training and then eventually sport. So I wanted to share some pointers today on what I think is important. We're going to be doing a series over the course of the next couple months, going over what should be done in the weeks prior leading up to surgery, maybe like 6 weeks before, and all the phases after that, returning to sport or even just returning to daily life. So before we start going over, I guess, the nitty-gritty details of what it is that we want to do, I want to take a second to kind of define a couple terms. Okay, so today we're going to be talking mostly just about the pre-operation portion. Okay, this is before we get our surgery done, before we actually show up to the orthopedics office to have our knee operated on. So one of the first things that we're going to say is, okay, before surgery like this, it's in your best interest to get in shape. Okay, well, what exactly does that mean, get in shape? Because there's a lot of different methodologies, there's a lot of different things I could do, a lot of different things that could mean. Get in shape for a marathon, get in shape for what? When we talk about getting in shape, keep in mind you had a lot of trauma to your knee, right, when you injured it. You may or may not be fully functional. I was pretty functional. I was able to still do practices. I was just limited in certain ways, obviously because my ACL was fully torn and I had a tear in my meniscus. So when we talk about being in shape, we're talking about a high level of strength. Now let's define strength. When we're talking about strength, we're talking about general stability, and we're talking about the ability to control your muscles, right? Muscular control. That's how we define strength here at Hargett. So we're talking about having high levels of strength. One of the main reasons is after your surgery, you're going to be pretty limited. All right, it's not a lot of fun the first 2 weeks after your surgery. You're going to want to have a pretty good degree of physical strength just so you can do daily tasks. You're going to struggle with things like showering, picking things up off the ground, just your daily stuff, getting in and out of the car, things like that. So you want to make sure that your level of strength all over is high, and we'll provide at the end some sample workouts that I think are good to do that are going to make sure that you have a pretty, I won't say good time, again, it's pretty rough the first 2 weeks, right? But at least you can feel pretty strong getting around and like you're going to be on track. The other portion of that is that they're going to be cutting into some tissue, right? And they're going to be doing a pretty invasive surgery. So you want to make sure that because you know already you're going to atrophy, right? Your muscles are going to get weaker as a result of the surgery, that you don't come in with your muscles already weak, right? You do your best to make sure that all those muscles that they're going to operate are strong. That's going to make your recovery process that much faster. Now, I didn't really think of it that way. I was in shape, you know, I'm an athlete. I came into the surgery in what I would say pretty good physical condition. I didn't do probably the best job nutritionally. I eat pretty healthy, but I would have your occasional Coke, beer, fast food, and what have you. But so when we talk about being in shape, we're also going to be talking about nutrition, right? So a high level of strength, but also nutrition. When we're talking about nutrition, we're mostly going to be talking about trying to limit foods that are going to raise your inflammation. All right, so we want to make sure, especially, and this will be more after the surgery than before, but you want to start building those habits in the meantime. You want to try and limit the amount of inflammatory foods that you're taking in. There's going to be a lot of inflammation in your knee right after the surgery. So if you can kind of limit that by forming some of those habits, and it's going to make your recovery process that much smoother. The other aspect of that is you want to kind of limit your weight, right? Every time you take a step after your surgery, that's going to be force going into your injured leg or your uninjured leg. So the more that you can do to limit your weight, you're going to be putting less stress on the knee per step, right? So you want to kind of monitor your weight while you're doing that. The other important aspect of nutrition is the nutrients. You want to make sure that you're providing your body with as many nutrients as possible after undergoing such an intensive surgery, right? So that's what we're talking about when we refer to being in shape, right? You have a pretty good level of physical strength, you have pretty good nutrition, your weight's not super high, and you're also working on things that you otherwise wouldn't because you now you have a limitation, right? When you're healthy, you can do a lot of things, you can focus on your sport, you can kind of just focus on your life. This injury is going to force you to kind of take a step back and maybe develop some areas that you otherwise wouldn't have, right? So me too, I'm a positive person, so I would try to look at the opportunity for growth and not just focus on the negative of that, oh, you know what, 6 months I'm going to be pretty limited and not able to do my sport. If you focus on what it is you need to do, and you really discipline yourself and challenge yourself to do that, the next 6 months you should come back way stronger and better of, you know, a person, athlete, however you want to look at it, after you've gone through that process, right? So the next thing we're going to be talking about is training, right? What should I do for training? Here at Hargett, we have an evaluation process. So we don't really train people until we get to know more about them and what their body can tolerate, what's good for them. Obviously, if you're watching this video and you don't really have access to us, we're not going to have that. So the sample workouts I'm going to provide are going to be pretty general. They're not just going to be exercises, but also concepts that you can kind of take with you and use to strengthen yourself or make yourself better, whether it's at home or, you know, a small gym that you have access to. So once we're past the evaluation part, what we really believe here is that you should never train in pain, right? You want to make sure that, because you're going to take pain from sport or life, right? Training, you should never have pain. And when I'm talking about pain, there's a difference between building up a tolerance to something, like say you're squatting, right? And you progress to where you can tolerate a lot of stress, right? And being able to grind through that and push through that, there's a difference between that kind of pain, which we would call muscular fatigue, and pain. We're talking about lower back pain, my shoulder being in pain, things that actually hurt and you know aren't good, right? Pain is going to send signals that shut off muscles, and it's also going to increase your levels of inflammation, right? Not in a good way. So you want to make sure that you're not doing things that are putting you in pain. You should always try to find an alternative exercise, or maybe there's a technical issue. Maybe it's a movement quality issue that you need to address so that you're not training in pain. But yeah, as a rule here, we never train in pain. One of the next things that we'll talk about is muscle function, right? We want to always be taking care of our muscles, because muscles are going to move the bones, they're going to move the joints, they're going to move the body, right? So always looking at training in the sense of, how am I improving my muscle function? When I worked out, did I actually just lift a bunch of weight, or did I actually get better at controlling muscles, right? So the exercises I'm going to provide, they're all going to be targeting muscles. So I think it's really important that you look at it that way, especially after your surgery. You're going to have to re-educate your muscles, and we'll be going that in the following videos that we cover. So really focusing on, how am I developing my muscles? So going back to strength being muscular control, when we train for strength, we always think about the muscle function, okay? So that means sometimes you got to put your ego aside and focus on using a lighter weight so you can actually develop a higher level of control and put all the stress into the muscle, not into the joints, okay? Strength is always going to be characterized by an isometric, you being able to hold something, right? Let's pretend I got a heavy dumbbell here, right? You being able to hold something and you being able to slowly let that down, all right? So we would call that an isometric, and we'd call that an eccentric, okay? So you want to focus on developing strength that way, because that's how you're going to have really good levels of stability. Also, after the injury, you're not going to have those abilities, right? And when you start re-educating the muscles, those are the characteristics that you're going to want to first develop, all right? So if you take a heavier weight, even though the weight's heavy, and you just start doing curls or what have you, right, and there's never a pause, that's more of an expression of power, right? And that's something we see often. People confuse power and strength. So just to remind you, strength, I'm always going to hold, and I'm going to be able to lower it slowly, right? Power, I'm not going to. I'm going to contract, relax, and I can use a much heavier weight to do that, right? It also can be more stressful on your joints. So just a quick recap, we think it's really important for you to be in shape going into your surgery, right? I would say, you know, at least 6 weeks prior, you should be getting on a program, trying to develop your habits, trying to improve your levels of strength, trying to work on your nutrition. We talked about movement quality, muscle function, trying to stay away from anti-inflammatory foods. Your technique is important when you train. You should always be striving to have better technique, better form, making sure that you're really taking good care of your body. So anyway, my name's Christopher Hargett again. I hope this helped. We're going to be providing some sample exercise next if you stick around. If you're curious about more about what we do, just go ahead and follow the tag @Team Hargett on any of your social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and that's pretty much it. All right, thanks. Hey everyone, again I'm Christopher and this is Aurelius, one of the other owners. If you found any of this content useful, helpful, or interesting to you and you liked it, please go ahead and subscribe to our videos.
Hit that subscribe.
Hit that thing, hit it, dude. And thanks for supporting our cause.